Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am literally overjoyed and overwhelmed seeing all of your beautiful faces. My name is Jean Marie Keevans. I am the owner of Little Shadow Productions. Our goal is to create a big impact without taking up a whole lot of space and shine a light on others. So, in doing so, we started this little talk series in the hope to not only highlight the brilliance of others, but also to ask them to continue to pay it
Mhm.
forward. So, as I'm sure you saw on the website, and you will see in a follow up email after this, um, each of the artists who I invited here tonight have chosen various charities that they ask if you could financially support those charities. Fantastic. If you can't, please highlight their message so that we just keep paying it forward. That's the goal. So I will not go into a large introduction because everybody here already knows who these wonderful women are. But I'd like to thank Leslie Ash and Nancy Staub for joining us tonight. And I leave the floor to both of you.
Okay, well, thank you, Jean Marie. Actually, Nancy's going to kick us off.
Well, first of all, of course, I want to thank Jean Marie and then you, Leslie. I wouldn't have accepted this if it weren't to plug your book. You got to show the cover, Out of the Shadow. I came out of the shadows of the swamps of Louisiana to talk about Out of the Shadows book by Leslie Ash.
Okay.
Basically, it's a book that I wanted to write after the World Puppetry Festival, but I never got around to it because it always seemed to me an international festival, never mind many international festivals, is a wonderful way to talk about what puppetry is and what it can be and what hopefully it will be. So Leslie's done that beautifully with, of course, the magnificent photography of people like our Richard Turbide,
Yeah.
one of the most important documentarians in our field.
So actually, I'll just interrupt for 1 second. I just want to say, as far as yes, thank yous on this book. Obviously, the book starts with a beautiful introduction by Cheryl Henson, and I'm very, very, very pleased and honored by that. And then, yes, Richard Termini did do this opening photograph and many of the photographs in the book. The book actually has 165 photos by 60 different photographers, but Richard takes up a lot of the beautiful pages. This particular image is, most of you probably recognize it. It's from Mabou Mine's Peter and Wendy, and it was adapted by Liza Lorwin, directed by Lee Brewer, with puppets by Julie Archer. And this image here is obviously the actress Karen Kandel, who, for those of you who saw the production, she does all the voices and she's absolutely spectacular. So I just have to do a bit of a shout out to all of those people. So Nancy, back to you.
Well, we were talking about wondering when we first met.
Oh.
That was first. I'm looking at my notes, can't read them. But before we really start, I want to say, of course, none of the things we're going to talk about would have happened without Jim and Jane Henson. And Cheryl has been so incredible, not only to take over, but to expand everything she and they and all the rest of us dreamed of. And there's so many of us, and those of you watching are among them, that have contributed. And we thought about it. And if we start listing names, we'd spend a whole hour just listing names. So you're going to have to forgive us that we're not talking about names except for the Hensons at the moment. You're all in the articles we've written and in the books we've written. And we're all about the art and the artists that make it. So we share the dream and we've shared the work. And don't think we're forgetting you or thinking that we're so important. We just helped lead the parade.
Well, and many of the people here are actually in the books. So that's also,
what I mean.
Thank you for your wonderful work being part of it. And actually, I see Penny. I have to give a special shout out to Penny because Penny was my first puppet teacher. And this is going back quite a while. And I think Jeffrey was 12 at the time when we started. So I've known him quite a long time. So it's very special. And it was very special to me that they were able to perform in one of the festivals. It meant a lot. So I just have to say that. Obviously, a lot of other artists here were part of it, but no one has, for me, the longevity of that relationship with Penny. So I'll just say that. Nancy, do you want? I was going to go on to other things as far as when we met, but do you want to? I didn't want to cut you off.
Well, we'll just say that we met in Moscow.
Right.
And I was in Moscow because of Jim and Jane Henson and a whole committee of people. Jim, as president of UNIMA, called a bunch of us together at the Detroit Institute of Art, hosted by Audley Grossman, the curator of the collection of puppets there. And we all sat down and we were trying to think of the best way to make puppetry move forward in the United States, particularly as an art form for adults. And one of the ways we decided on was touring, and Jim and Jane sponsored a tour of the Rosers, by the way, under the UNIMA auspices. But then Jim said, well, why don't we just invite UNIMA to have its next Congress and Festival here? And everybody said, oh, that's a great idea. Well, who's going to do that? Well, Nancy, why don't you go make the invitation? And, Mike Osnowitz and Molly can go with you, and Bill Baird. And said, oh, great idea. We had no idea what we were going to do, where we were going to do it, how to do it. We just went and said, well, Jim Henson invited you all to the United States. And I must say, Irina, it was your mother that finally tapped it, because she spoke up for us and voted. She said, America should have the next festival. She didn't realize how inept and unprepared we were. Things have changed now. UNIMA was very careful about where they accept invitations.
Right.
But at that meeting, I was also telling Leslie one funny story.
Yeah,
George Latshaw, being an educator type, he made everybody sit in a big oval space. And none of us had puppets, because Jim Henson said, if you come to the meeting, you have to leave puppets at home. We're not going to bring our own puppets. We're going to talk about making puppetry more important in America. Okay, no puppets. So when it got to Bill Baird's turn, they said, why did you get interested in puppetry? And he said, because I can control everything.
True testament.
We laughed a lot, and it's true of a lot of us, of course.
Having worked for Bill, I can say that is definitely the way he liked things. So it was I love that story. So, well, and I was in Moscow. I mean, I was a kid. I just had been, I had just graduated college, and I was working with Bill, and he'd been talking about the whole world of international puppet theater, and it was my opportunity to go, and I decided to go. And really, I was meeting all of the puppetry royalty, yourself included. So it was quite an amazing time for me. And I thought it was cute, actually. Jean Marie shared a picture of her. I'm going to switch to this. Jean Marie shared a picture of her with Ellie Lou and with Nancy and with Pam. And I thought, well, we have our version of that picture. So this is Cheryl and Ellie Lou and myself and Nancy, a wonderful picture that I really love. So this was actually not at Moscow, but it was later when we were doing the festivals. But to me, it typifies the beginning of, the importance of keeping those relationships going and what we got from them. So I just wanted to put that in. That was just for fun. So Nancy, do you want to talk then about how you went from that invitation to actually managing to do the 1980 festival?
Well, when we got home, we had to face reality. And Puppeteers of America agreed to sponsor the festival, gave us their $3,000 seed money, and agreed not to have a national festival, to have the international festival in place. So that was important. And then UNIMA was to be in charge of the Congress. So we started working on finding sponsors. And by some serendipity, and you could read about it in the Puppetry Journal, we managed to get enough funds. We ended up running $1 million festival. Started with $3,000, and we were only 30,000 in the hole. And Jim had always promised to cover any shortfall. Of course, that was all very well. That was a handshake. And he was flying in those super jets back and forth from Europe to New York. And I was going to go to jail if anything happened. I was signing all the contracts. What can I say? I mean, you're only young once, but we got lucky, and that 30,000 we owed was made up in the tour of the exhibition.
Right.
So ultimately, we had 50 performances. I don't know. We had the exhibition at the Corcoran that went to 10 additional venues.
Oops.
And we had 1,400 registrants. And so then the PBS special reached 1 million more. So we reached over 3 million people with that festival. And the tour of Puppets, Art and Entertainment made the $30,000 back, but Jim gave it to the Puppeteers of America. So it had a happy ending. Of course, the night that we thought that George Thornton and I thought we were in deep debt, we went out to a fancy Italian restaurant because we thought it was our last supper before we got arrested. It worked out all right.
The Last Supper, huh?
It was our last supper. We were afraid.
That's funny. Well, segueing from that exhibit, I'll segue to one of the exhibits that I had fun doing. So, obviously I was director of exhibitions for Henson and did Art of the Muppets, and I didn't start it, but I took it over in 1983. But this was one of the Dark Crystal, which was at Library of Performing Arts tableau, and I had so much fun doing this one. It was 1983, and I pretended that this was an archaeological dig because this universe was so well articulated and so well, every piece of it was so beautiful and so wonderfully executed and thought through that it really was a whole civilization. So it was really fun to play with it in that way.
Well, I loved it. I told you that was one of my favorite exhibits ever. I loved your concept. It was brilliant. And of course, then you managed the Muppet exhibits, and we were grateful at the Center for Puppetry Arts Museum when you all let it have a venue at the center, and over 100,000 people came. So
that was with when Art of the Muppets toured to Atlanta.
Yeah, that was 1982, and that was a big boost to our museum program. It brought a lot of attention to it and funding. And of course, now that the Henson family have given us over 600 objects now to date, and have a whole gallery, and helped us have the 2 new galleries. The Henson star status and funding have made our museum a destination museum and very popular. We get thousands of visitors, and we're very, very pleased. And it feels right to have a global collection along with Jim's, because he always advocated for learning from other puppeteers. He always said you could learn a lot of stuff from other puppeteers. And he liked going to festivals, and he liked workshops. And so it just feels right for the 2 galleries to be side by side.
Actually, I'm just going to sidetrack. I just see Richard asking, where did the Art of the Muppets originate? It was actually at the Museum of Art in San Diego. Steve Brezzo. Yeah, I think he was the director there at that time, and he had a puppetry background. So, but Mari Casel was the original designer for that exhibition, and I was out there helping get that organized in San Diego. I took it over a little later, but it was a fun beginning, good start. And of course, it went to so many beautiful art museums. Jim was really happy that it was in art museums primarily, some science museums and sometimes children's museums, but for the majority were art museums. And doing it at the center was interesting. It was apparently Vince, this is never going to go in the book, but Vince said I was a little bit tyrannical. I mean, I was like going around the property saying, there's poison ivy over here, you're gonna have to clean this up. So that's his memory of the start of that exhibit, but it worked out really well. And I love them doing Gone with the Wind. The costumes from Gone with the Wind, Piggy and Kermit were the costumes. It was scarlet and red, so it was quite special, that one there. So no question.
I forgot to mention too, another thing that was special is during the Puppets Art and Entertainment Tour, the Russians had to back out because we were having all those political problems
Mhm.
of an exhibit at the Troy Institute. And so Jim and you were able to get the Art of the Muppets there at the same time. So at one point, Puppets Art and Entertainment and the Muppet exhibit were side by side in an art museum. So that was pretty exciting too.
All I remember about Detroit, I do remember setting it up, but my main memory of Detroit was Jim was coming in for the grand opening. And I don't remember where he was flying in from, but his plane was late. And I was there with Kermit, really nervous. And finally he came. And of course, in typical Jim style, he just went right out and performed beautifully, and everything was as smooth as could be. But I was a nervous wreck.
Oh, I had the same experience with the opening of the puppet, the CPA puppet building in what was that, 1978, because Jim was again coming in late, and I went to pick him up at the airport, and I locked Kermit in the trunk by mistake, and I couldn't find the key because it had fallen off the key ring. Well, I found it just in time, but again, he said, "That's why I always keep Kermit with me." But it worked out all right.
That's funny. Well, so then I think the next thing we were going to focus on, I think a little bit, was the beginning of the first festival. And actually, it would be great if you start that whole conversation, because I obviously helped to make it happen, but it wasn't my idea, and I didn't start the whole process. You and Cheryl were very much more involved in that way. So it would really be good if you just talk about that a little bit.
Well, Cheryl made it happen. We had
Mhm.
talked about it ever since 1980, because we thought, well, doing it in Washington, DC was for the fundraisers and the, corporate people and the Smithsonian and so on. But we always felt like we had to have a festival in New York City to draw the attention of the theater community, to make puppetry considered seriously as a theater art form.
Mhm.
And so we kept saying, well, Jim, don't you want to have a festival in New York? Well, I'm not ready yet. You know how Jim is. When he's ready, he's ready. And it was Cheryl that on her own got the idea, well, hey, Daddy, why don't we do this? And she made it happen. So it was very exciting, and it was a dream for all of us come true that Cheryl was able to do it, and that you and Cheryl together made
Right.
so many beautiful festivals happen, and now write a book about it.
Yeah, right.
Fantastic.
Well, and Cheryl's here, so she could correct us if we're wrong, but it was Jim and Cheryl went to see Enno Podell perform Herman at the MIT Festival. And that was what really sealed the deal. And obviously Cheryl then was very much instrumental in that moving forward from there. And it was my pleasure to be able to help with that and make 5 festivals happen. So yeah, but the start of it was very important, I think, to recognize that. And then we talked about the fact that each festival had an exhibition. And Nancy, this was really your exhibition, this particular one. This was for the first festival. This was, you curated this for the Center for Puppetry Arts. I expanded it in New York and
Yes.
added Hannah Tierney's performance, and she's here with us tonight. She actually performed incidental pieces for Satin and Strings in the space, but the core of the show was from Center for Puppetry Arts. you want to
Yes. And well, of course, it was very exciting for us for it to be at the Lincoln Center after it was at the Center for Puppetry Arts. I don't know if everybody can see that's the catalog. And I want to point out that the
Let me
catalogs
make
of
sure you
all,
can see it.
the catalogs of all, oh, I'll put it on the other side. So you see what it is? All of the catalogs from the Center for Puppetry Arts exhibits are available online free of charge. So if anybody's interested in the catalogs, help yourself.
Mhm.
And also Puppets Art and Entertainment is online on Puppeteers of America website, free of charge. And So it's good to know there, all those things are available. And I think all of the articles we've written in Puppetry International and the Puppetry Journal can be available online. If anybody wants to read, if you want to see your name in print, and if you want to see more photographs and learn more about it, we did chronicle it. And even though I didn't write a book, we were effective in having PBS do I guess I already mentioned that 1 hour special, but they also did 35 additional hours. We made a deal. Any show they set up to video, they had to do the whole show. So we have 35 hours of video, and it's now at the Lincoln Center Library, which I know the Hensons are very strong in sponsoring. And so you can see all those hours there if you want to.
Well, thanks to Cheryl and Z, they've all been digitized. So you can see all of the shows from the, not all, many of the productions from the festivals. And it's called At the Theater of Film and Tape Archive, and it's the Henson Collection there, very important. So it's circuitous, but Z has put, Z has put amazing instructions on the website of how you actually get to see them. Of course, this will be post-pandemic, so at this point, but I think that it is really worth trying to see it. Actually, I just want to say, I'm looking at Hannah right now, and I did a couple of call outs for the book, but I have to put her on the spot. I don't think there would be a book except for Hannah Tierney. Hannah had done a beautiful book of her 5 miles and 10 years at 5 miles. And I just looked at it and I thought, that is wonderful. It's so beautiful. I love the feel of it. I love the shape of it. I love the size of it. It's wonderful. And she said, well, now you have to do one about the festivals. And I said, I don't think so. And she said it a number of times. And finally, I decided she was right. And it is, yeah, yay, Hannah. Thank you, Bonnie. And so the shape was already determined. She had done kind of a square, and I just liked the whole feel of it. And that was the whole thing. And both she and Nancy were really kind, reading many, many, many drafts and revisions. These things go a long way. And Cheryl, of course, read it many times. And it definitely grew along the way. So it took, what's the old saying, takes a village. It definitely took a lot of people's good input. So I'm grateful to everybody who had a hand in it. So back to you. I'm sorry. I just happened to see Hannah's face.
Yeah. Well, actually, if it weren't for Carol Sterling and Hannah Tierney that giving me place to stay free of charge in New York for many, many years, probably nothing would have happened either.
Right.
They were naming people after all, but we can't help it.
Right.
So many of you out there that did so much. But I was thinking, we didn't think ahead about Here Come the Puppets. Excuse me, the Jim Henson Presents. It was sort of an offshoot of the festival because we had hoped to do a documentary of each of companies coming to the festival, which we weren't able to do. And then you got the idea, or you and Jim, to do that series. And I think it's such an important, wonderful series.
It wasn't my idea. I helped think about some of the artists that might have been done, but it wasn't.
Yeah. It was really George Thorne's idea.
It was my idea.
Well, George Thorne, that was our advisor for the festival, wanted us to do something like that with the 1980 festival. But when it didn't happen, Jim took the idea and ran with it.
Yeah, it's a wonderful series.
Cheryl was involved in that, but
yeah. For anybody who hasn't seen it, it's a wonderful 6-part series with Jim talking with many of 6 wonderful artists from around the world. So a couple of whom we actually had in the festivals, but the others not. But yeah, we didn't think to put up an image of it, but it's very important, and it's an important part of that Henson collection at the center. I'm sorry, not the center. I'm looking at you thinking center, but I mean, well, it's center, Lincoln Center. Lincoln Center. Lincoln Center at the Library of Performing Arts. So I in a way, we're speeding along because we don't have that much time, but because I showed the first festival brochure and now I'm showing the last festival brochure. So if you read the book, many of you have and many of you have been part of it, you'll see much more about the festivals and all of the artists that took part in it. But for our little just chat today, I just thought that I wanted to show this last one, the last festival, important because of the dates. September 2000 was the last festival, and also for all of the partners. If you look at the bottom, the first brochure was Puppetry at the Public, and all of the shows were completely at the Public Theater. By the time it grew along the way, and by 2000, we had all of these different presenting partners. And the idea really behind that was, has worked. The idea behind that was that the Henson Foundation was never going to be in the business of doing festivals forever. And it was very important to have have more theaters that were showing that work. And then since the festival, Cheryl has continued that work. 2 years later, there was some money left over for a potential festival that we didn't do. And she used that as a marketing umbrella for festivals, a festival around New York City. And the La Mama Festival came out of that, for one, very important. And then, of course, the Henson Foundation funding still gives a presenting grants to many of these presenters. So it's a way to keep that going in New York, which I think is incredibly important. I have now, actually, we said we weren't going to mention all the names, and then we're going to mention a whole lot of names. And the danger of that is that you then leave somebody out. But
yes.
but I just thought this was kind of too fun to not share. I just had to share it. It's never going to be in a book, but it's just too fun. Cheryl was being honored at La Mama, and a whole group of many of our staff members for the festival were there, and so it was a great opportunity to thank them. Right smack in the middle, in front of Heidi Wallenius, is Ann Denon, who was very much the third party with Cheryl and I making this possible. So I just thought I had to show that. So much as I said we weren't going to show all the people, because Nancy was saying, well, there's too many people to talk about. So
well, I forgot what we showed the picture of Vince, and I meant to talk more about it. Obviously, he's, as General Secretary of UNIMA and head of the center, he's held so many planning meetings and been so prominent in everything that's happened with UNIMA and P of A, never mind the center and the museum. And we were going to talk about it. Is that picture still available? Anyway,
you want to see?
Yeah, we had a wonderful picture of him and Alan.
I'll go back. Bear with me. I'll go back. Bear with me, and I'll find it.
Well, Burr was so kind to be.
It was with Bert Hillstrom, actually, also.
Yeah, well, Burr was thrilled to be the MC of the opening of the festival.
Here we go.
There he is, and that's a nice picture of Vince and Alaloo. And of course, we all know that the world of puppetry wouldn't have been the same in America without Alaloo, and the whole world for that matter. Her shining light. She gave us her support no matter what we did, no matter how many things we did wrong. She was always there for us. So you could almost dedicate all of this to Alaloo.
Why not? Why not? Well, she certainly shows up in some of these, quite a few of the pictures. So, which I think is.
Yeah, you got that last festival picture, don't you, that you were going to show?
Yeah, I will show that. But I think we get to the more about the museum. You actually already talked about it. There's a couple of images coming up, which is the center. But I don't know. You've kind of talked about it. I don't know if you want to say more. It's up to you.
The photo of the opening is nice.
Whoops.
There we go. there. That was a
Yeah, the
wonderful
Henson
moment.
family at the opening of the Henson exhibit.
Yeah,
So
the
why don't you
family.
talk about that a little more?
Well, it was so wonderful that not only is the family supporting the gallery and giving us objects, but they come with their presence. They've been doing those dark crystal balls every year that sell out and just consistently do all kinds of things to help us. We can't thank them enough. And this is such a great moment in that event of opening the new galleries in 2015.
And
This is one of the galleries, and of course Bradford Clark and Kelsey Wirtz were the two people that, and they had a design team they worked with. They made these beautiful gallery, and this is part of the world collection. Well, what do we call it? The global collection. And the Bunraku puppets I think of as the Venus de Milo or the Mona Lisa of the collection. There you can see there was water puppets.
sorry,
That was
do you wanna-
Brad had the idea to make a model of the water puppets that was kind of interesting. Anyways, we're very pleased that it happened.
well, actually, Nancy, I'd love you to talk a little bit more about the whole impetus and the whole start of collecting. That museum really came out of your passion for collecting. And I know that Puppetry Journal and Puppetry International are going to be doing a joint issue that's about collecting. And I know that you've written an article for that, but it would be fun to hear. I just think the whole start of that is kind of wonderful and amazing.
Well, the start of it was trying to save puppets from collectors and not from collectors, from decorators. I mean, someone would see one in a shop and tell me about it. I said, oh, I got to get that before some decorator gets it, save it for the puppetry world. And sometimes they might have been some that were going to be thrown away. So I started collecting them, and I used them sort of influenced by Bill Baird, where as decoration in the lobby. And that's all they were. They were decoration and complementary to the performances.
Right.
But then more and more, I got to know Milton Halpert, and he was a big collector, and he started guiding me. He said, now, Nancy, just buy one or two of everything, and that's all you need. Well, I didn't have that.
How about 100 or 200?
Anyway, so of course, then we started using it as a way to present the history of puppetry to the public. And they use it as educational tools in the distance learning. They now call it digital learning. Right. And we use it to show the cultures of the world. I always say that one reason to have a puppet museum is to show the common humanity that underlines all the differences. So you might have white be a funeral color in Japan and black is the funeral color in America, but on the other hand, we all have funerals. And so it's very, very important important tool for educating about other cultures and other people.
Great. Okay, so the image that you were talking about next, I'll just go to it, was this wonderful picture. This is at the Yukon Festival in 2015. And I just have to say, well, actually, Nancy and I have slightly different recollections about this, but actually, I guess they're the same. They just, which come first. I just remember Nancy calling me and saying, I think this is probably my last festival. You're going to have to come. And so I said, well, if you're going and Ellie Lou's going, yeah, I'm going. So I fortunately listened to you and did go and had a glorious time. And it was actually just a year before we lost Ellie Lou. So it was incredibly important to have that time with her, that time with you, that time with Penny Francis. And actually I saw Irina and John are on the call. We got to spend some lovely time together at that festival also. It was very meaningful. And obviously Heather did beautiful work out for the festival and was a great shining light at that. So I just had to throw that in because I like the picture.
Well, yeah, another name we have to say, Manuel had the idea to give us flowers, you and Manuel.
Yes,
And
yes.
we were very touched. We didn't expect anybody to give us any attention. We had some two old ladies. And right before Alaloo died, I told her, you know, Alaloo, you're the only person in the world that could have talked me into staying in one of those college dorms one more time. She really was. I don't think I'll ever do it again. She
Well,
laughed.
you what?
She laughed.
She laughed. Yeah, she said, "Oh, yes, you will." But it was very important that we had that time together. I really loved it. So what we haven't yet, I guess, moving forward, looking forward, some of the things that we've talked about was the Henson Foundation. This is the board in 2019. Richard does this thing where he sets it all up and then he runs back around and gets into the picture and then he says somebody else took it. So it's quite remarkable. But this was the board as of 2019. And I thought that it would be nice, Nancy, for you just to talk about the start of it in 1982.
Well, after the festival, Jim and I had lunch one time in London. And he said, you know, I'm making a lot of money and I really want to think about the best way to help puppetry. And I said, well, you know, let me talk to people that know that kind of stuff. And I got some advice that a foundation would be a good idea. And we thought about if a family foundation would be good because then the Hansons could control it. At one point, there was some thought of doing a North American puppet foundation and try to get famous people like Jim and Bill to back it and be part of it. But that felt right to me because, you know, I've been on a lot of boards and you well know they rotate and they change their goals and so on. So somehow it just felt right. So I did some research with him and Al Gottesman, his lawyer, and he had a friend who was an expert in not-for-profit foundations, et cetera, et cetera. And Jim said, I want to call this the Hanson Foundation, not the Jim Henson Foundation, because I want my entire family to care about it and be part of it. And sure enough, Cheryl has been the major person to make the foundation move forward and be so important to puppetry. And we have to thank all the Hansons, but particularly Cheryl.
And I don't think people realize that Jim actually didn't endow it in the beginning. He really just funded each cycle, and so it's really through the family and through Jane Henson, and then of course now largely, primarily Cheryl Henson, that this foundation continues to do all the great work. And it happens to be that today was when they were announcing the grants for this year. So that's.
I have another funny story to tell because at the time, Jim said, well, I'll give 10,000 to it and we'll see how it works. If it works, I'll give more. And I said, oh, I've got this book. I've had this book from Al's friend. I'm sorry, his name's escaping me. And I pulled it out and I said, it says here, there's no point having a foundation unless you give at least 30,000 to it. I did, and I had proof. And so Jim and Jane said, well, I'll give 10,000. And so then Al said, okay, the company will give 10,000. So we started out with 30,000 because of the book. Yeah, that was something that George White always said. He said, have your information, whatever you want, under your chair. It's sort of like a violin, but don't take it out until I ask you to play it. So I had the book under my chair just in case, and it served us in good stead because we had 30,000 to give away the first year. And I know that Julie Taymor and she kept alive on that 10,000 that year. Of course, that's very funny now.
Well, but it was important. That's how things happen. So
yeah, well, Elliot told me it really literally kept him alive that summer. So that's nice to hear that you feel good if we made a difference.
Exactly. Jean Marie has this really lovely idea that rather than, rather than the great riches that we would be getting for doing this, that in fact it would be nice to promote a couple of organizations that we're both involved with. And Nancy, of course, has talked quite a bit about the Center for Puppetry Arts and the Museum Project, and that would be what she would like any contributions to go to. And I'll put it here. I am involved with, I'm co-curating an exhibition coming up. It'll be in August at the Clemente Center, which is down on Suffolk Street. And it will open, there's going to be a major exhibition. I think a lot of you have already heard about it. There's going to be a major puppetry exhibition at the Museum of the City in New York, Uptown. And I am co-curating with the curator of that show, Mancho Lopez. I'm co-curating with him tentatively, well, working title, Downtown at the Clemente, pretty sexy, but we're working on it. Anyway, it's good. It's time to coincide. The Downtown show will coincide with the Museum of the City in New York, and also with Manuel Moran's International Puppet Fringe Festival. And I think it's really, they work with, it's the only, as far as I understand, the only Puerto Rican cultural center. And they support artists with performances, with rehearsal spaces, with exhibition space. It's kind of a wonderful place. So I would love, and they have, I would love any gifts to go towards the Clemente and towards the exhibition. No arm twisting, but I'm just putting it out there. So anyway, it's a fun place, and I'm excited about doing it. And a lot of you have heard about it already, so I won't belabor it more, but I think it's a great organization. Jean Marie, do you want to pop in with more thoughts on that, or should we just open to questions?
Sure, we can open to questions. I haven't seen any in the chat just yet.
Okay.
And I have a few, if I
Okay.
may. Leslie and I have been talking about her book and process and how these things have developed. And clearly, I revere these women because they created opportunities for me to get an education as a growing artist by curating exhibits and putting together festivals. And I think that is incredibly important. And in that, I was mentioning to Leslie that one of the most important exhibits I ever saw was actually at the Clemente. So I just want to echo that is an incredibly important institution and probably underseen. So I hope that people find their way there. Obviously, the center is remarkable.
Actually, it's in a beautiful gallery. It's called Abbraccio Interno, so it's internal hug. And I just love that. It's got, it's just a great name. I was like, okay, I like that.
And it's a memorable feeling to be in the Clemente. So I just want to offer that. But I was wondering if you would both talk. So it's Women's History Month, which is why I thought I would love to showcase the two of you now. But the globe is going through this trauma right now, and both of you have created such incredible space for cultural conversation. And I wonder, Nancy, you touched on it a little bit earlier, if you could talk a little bit about how you feel that puppetry, what are your feelings about puppetry's contribution to the healing of the globe and the communication that happens when we get together as puppeteers? If you could just touch on that and your wishes for that in the future.
Do we have another 2 hours?
In 3 sentences or less.
You're talking about, if not, I'm not sure if I might have been a charter member. I claimed to be a charter member, but I was an early member of NOW. And I'm embarrassed to say I was so busy worrying about women's rights. I must say I wasn't very much involved in the racist problems. And I was for women's rights at that point in my life, because that was what mattered to me. And I ended up in puppetry because as a person in theater, I hated being the perfect, as you do, the director would say, honey, don't try to act, just stand there and look pretty. I said, oh, please. And then I would be reading oh, Strindberg, and the director would say, honey, do you understand that? I said, well, I think so. You know, anyways, one way or another, puppetry ended up being the right form for me. When I was studying at RADA in London, I saw a Bratsov's unusual concert. And I said, there is no limit to what you can do with puppetry,
Exactly.
whether you're a male or female or gay or trans, you name it, you know, you could be any color, any culture. And with a puppet, you can express yourself. It's like Aline Blumenthal says, we create our own actors. We don't use found actors.
Mhm.
So puppetry became an important part to me. And then I accidentally found a niche in organizing because I'm a control freak. But everybody wanted to come to New Orleans to a festival. So I did a festival in New Orleans to make everybody happy. And then before you knew it, I was doing an international festival in Washington, D.C. But one thing led to another. But I had studied opera directing too. And there was only one woman opera director, and I studied with her, but it wasn't an easy path. So I was very happy to find a home in puppetry. And I'm still happy that I found that home.
We're all very lucky that you did. And how about you,
Oh,
Leslie? Would you?
I just saw a nice little note. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew just threw it out there that I was the first, their first advisor on Puppetry International. So, which was a great pleasure. So thank you, Andrew. I just happened to see that pop up as you, Marie, was asking. I think that, well, certainly my start was also interested in what puppetry could do. But I think Bread and Puppet was certainly a major influence on my getting started, combined, I think I write about it, combined with French existential theater, very obvious connection. So somehow they combined in my brain, being able to do visual theater and also to do meaningful theater that could make change. And I think today, I think the needs are greater, and I think artists are really responding quite well to what they're seeing around them, and propelling that forward. I think it is one of the roles of art. I don't think all art needs to be political per se, but I think the very act of reflecting on the world and seeing what's going on in the world and trying to make it a better place is certainly a major reason to make art.
Agreed. And when you think about next steps for festivals, exhibits, all of that, what do you hope to see from the next generation? Not that we want you to stop, by the way, because we don't.
I don't know, Nancy, you want to take that?
Well, I could start. I mean, I just wrote an article for Puppetry International about the future of exhibits. And some of you, I'm sure, have seen the so-called virtual exhibits, the amazing technology where they whir you through exhibits and you can stop in front of any case and read the signs or watch a video or whatever. But I feel like that's just like a promo. That's sort of instead of the real thing. Mm-hmm. And then there are virtual exhibits with their guided exhibits where maybe a curator walks around as they do live and explain stuff, and it gives a little more personal touch and more depth, mm-hmm. and take more time. But ultimately, the Smithsonian Institution has now a digital department and program, and they are doing, as other people are too, I know, digital exhibits. So they're using the camera to go in and out, let's say, of a costume, and then maybe show a shot of someone wearing a costume like it. You know what I'm saying? That they do multiple presentation of an object thanks to digitization. So I think the future of sharing the collection is in virtual exhibits, not virtual tours of exhibits, and not even guided virtual tours, but this so-called digitized exhibitions, because we have 6,000 objects and we can only display a few hundred at a time. And it's wonderful and it's important. And there are puppet museums all over the world, and each of them serves a function in their community. but we have some treasures that we don't want them to just lie on the shelf, even though we have state-of-the-art storage and we do have access to the storage for people who come and ask, but that's a limited number of people. So I want to spend my time and whatever little money I can spare on making a digital exhibition of puppets that I think are our most important treasures to share with the world.
I think, and the work that's happening at the center is very important, obviously. Some of the special exhibitions that they've been doing, the work that's happening at the Ballard Institute, doing some beautiful, beautiful exhibitions. And I think, well, I'm very excited about doing the exhibit at the Clemente, and thrilled that the Museum of the City of New York is doing an overview of historic and future work. I think that's really important. It's a good place for that to happen. And I saw that Jean Marie put up the dates of the Puppet Fringe. So yes, that's very good. August 11th, it begins with a week in hopefully with us all physically in the same place. And then another week, which will be virtual because people aren't traveling in from other countries yet. So, so we're hoping that some of the local, I think the idea is for the local artists to be able to do their work in person, because I agree with Nancy, it's great to do digital, but you know what, I'm really zoomed out. I'm really waiting for us to be back to live theater. I think, and certainly Cheryl's been great about making sure that people know every time there is puppet happenings is so important. To actually get the word out. And Carol, I think I just answered that. The festival, as far Manuel's here, he can speak up at this point. But the festival, as far as I understand it, will be part actual and part virtual. So.
And something that you're touching on that oh, go ahead, Nancy, sorry.
Oh, I just want to mention that the last UNIMA panel forum of Resilart is going to be next Saturday, and I'm part of that panel. And the subject is what is digital doing in terms of the future of puppetry. And
Yeah,
so people might be interested. Of course, it'll be online afterwards. You don't have to watch it live. Fortunately, I don't have to get up till 11 a.m. So that's good.
Yeah, Unima's been doing some incredible international programming, bringing it into our homes during this time, which has been a really incredible gift. And when you were talking, Nancy, about staying in people's houses, I was thinking, when I look at who attended this evening, and they're all remarkable people, they're all of the generation that came before me. And I see one or two people from the generation after me. And what excites me about that is that they are being reminded that when you're a puppeteer, Bart Rockelburn once said this to me, when you're a puppeteer, you can go anywhere in the world, there will always be a bed. And there's a truth to that, right? You can travel anywhere in the world, and all you have to say is you're a puppeteer. Someone will find you another puppeteer, or Unima will help you find them. And there is a free bed to be had, and a meal to be eaten, and company to be shared, conversations to be had. And hearing the two of you say that, I think, is encouraging to the next group who has been spending a lot of time in this Zoom world, that we will be back in the world and we will be in each other's homes again, which is really, I think, where the good stories come from.
I've got a funny anecdote about that.
Do it.
My kids were saying, Mom, you always invite these perfect strangers into our house. They might steal the silverware.
I live in a studio apartment, and for years, the only people who were calling me for a place to stay, and this is not an open invitation, I'm just saying that out loud. The only people who were calling me to stay were the dudes. And so I would say, well, you can come, but you have to sleep on the couch and face the other way, because I don't want to wake up with you staring at me. And they would laugh, but I meant it. And when I look back, the amount of funny stories I have from these dudes that I never would have known any other way is like ridiculous. You know, I would wake up and they would have, rearranged things on my wall just for fun and like stupid stuff. So before we wrap up, I do see a couple quick questions. They're actually not quick questions, but if we could find quick answers. What was the most impactful puppet production you saw in your lifetime? This is from Richard Termini.
Oh, Richard. Oh my goodness. I can't do just one, but I could do a couple. I would say of US work, the one I put on the cover of my book, I think Peter and Wendy was one of the most amazing productions, and the music from it still rings in my brain. I just think it was really incredible. On the international level, I would say Handspring's work, the work that was done between Handspring and William Kentridge, both Wojciech on the High Veld and Ubu and the Truth Commission were incredibly impactful works. So we presented a lot of great work, and there is a lot of great work being done and that has been done. But to me, those are the ones that just sort of stay with me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Nancy, do you have a favorite?
Well, that's really a horrible question because of course it's chicken and eggs that whenever we did festivals, we tried to have examples of different kinds of puppetry and for different age levels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Fortunately, there are so many amazing artists. Of course, you have to put Julie Taymor on the top of the list. At least I have to put Julie Taymor on the top of the list as the spectacular shows that she and Elliot have done and other people over the years. And I happen to love my friend Hannah Tierney's work. I think it's some of the most innovative in the world of puppetry. But then I'm going to have to get in trouble with all the other people.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's dangerous.
I mean, Albert Grozer, he of course was the great master of the marionettes. And you can't get any better. You could do different, but you couldn't get any better than that. And Richard Bradshaw in the shadow puppet world. I mean, you just couldn't get any better than Richard. And he gave us a Captain Kangaroo for our museum. So, this is a kind of not a bribe, not a return, but it's just a fact because I love his work so much and I love him so much. But it just goes on and on. It's Robin and Eric. And I'm a certain era. I don't know so many of the modern, not modern, the more contemporary puppeteers. Of course, there are people like the Chinese Theater Works that do so much to teach about culture through beautiful work. That has another kind of work. There's just so many different kinds of work. It's mind-boggling. So please forgive me, any of you I didn't mention off it right away. I'll write a long letter of all of them.
Here you go.
I'll post a long list. It's a very long list.
Dangerous question.
What you actually provided, whether it's your favorite or not, is a really great list of resources for those who don't know them to look into, and for those who do know them to take a moment to thank and gratitude, right, for their work. And before we wrap up, thinking of thanking and gratitude, you had said, Nancy, earlier that we should thank Ali Lu and her generous spirit. And funny enough, next week, Heather Henson and I are going to do one of these, which is really fun with me to just kind of hang with my friend in public, although we will not be sharing anything personal. But no, we will talk puppets. No, we won't. Actually, we're going to talk about our relationship with the environment and some other less puppet related things, but I'm sure we will bring up puppets. But I say that because the group that I'm supporting is the Ali Lu Curtin Generous Spirit Award that is at the O'Neill. That's one of our scholarships that we support somebody who creates work with that same spirit that she had. So I loved hearing you say those words. It was like, oh, that was the right name for that award. So I just want to thank both of you for all of your tireless work and your expertise. Everybody should go out and get that book. And when you do, put it on your bookshelf or your coffee table, take a picture of it and put it on your Instagram, because we're going to pump up this woman's Insta feed here, people. Let's sell some books. But we're here tonight to honor puppetry, but we all have to eat. So let's go ahead and make that book blow up. But again,
Jean Marie had me doing these pictures of what's on your coffee table. So that's what she's talking about.
It didn't come out of nowhere. And if you happen to put something else on your coffee table that has a lot of views, tag that too. Let's get that social media going, guys.
Thank you, Jean Marie.
Thank you both. This has been an absolute honor. And have a great night, everyone.
Thanks very much
for organizing all this. And Will, too. Special thanks to Will.
fun, Nancy. There's Will. Yeah, thank you. He figured out this spotlighting word.